The term privacy subsumes a much broader set of protections than security alone. But in this day and age, if you don't have a strong base of security from end to end with full lifecycle protection, you're not going to have any privacy. So there has to be a constant dialogue between the CISO, the chief privacy officer. Privacy and security go hand in hand. It's not one versus the other. It's how can they complement each other. You have to have both.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the best-selling CISO Compass: Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as other top CISOs and industry security leaders. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Ann Cavoukian, Executive Director, Global Privacy and Security by Design Center, Incorporated, and creator of the Privacy by Design methodology.
When I was in graduate school, I was studying psychology and the law. And I got my PhD in psychology, but I studied law extensively as well. And what appealed to me was protecting people's privacy, especially with the growing surveillance that was mounting with all of the online activities that were growing. And to me, privacy was absolutely critical in terms of preserving it. Privacy forms the foundation of our freedom. And we have to have freedom and we have to have privacy. So those two intersected. And then I had an opportunity. I was appointed as Privacy Commissioner of Ontario, Canada. And then it just took off after that.
Well, and thank you for all the work that you've done in this field. I know that we're all benefiting today from that. And you wrote a great piece for the CISO Compass book, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, which you're clearly a pioneer in this space. And you wrote an article called "Lead with Privacy by Design and Gain a Competitive Advantage." Could you tell us, how you came about, the Privacy by Design?
Well, I created Privacy by Design literally at my kitchen table over 3 nights after I had been appointed Privacy Commissioner. And the reason for this, when I was appointed Commissioner, the office was full of brilliant privacy lawyers, as you can imagine. But lawyers are very good at applying the law once the privacy infraction or data breach has taken place. Then they apply the law and offer very strong remedies. I wanted to complement that with a proactive method of preventing privacy harms from arising. I wanted to be proactive and embed privacy protective measures into the design of our operations, bake it into the code, make it an essential component of what we were doing so that people couldn't forget about it. It would always be present. So literally, as I said, I created Privacy by Design at home, and I took it to the office and I sold it to the lawyers, if you will. And I said, look, I'm not trying to replace privacy laws. They're critical. I want to complement them with proactive means of preventing the privacy harms from arising to begin with. And we had great success with this. It grew dramatically. It's been translated into 40 languages. And in 2010, it was unanimously passed as an international standard by privacy commissioners from all around the world. So it just took off after that, and I was delighted.
Why do you think that prior to that time that we had these laws on the books, but we didn't have a mechanism in place to actually apply privacy?
It's a different way of thinking. Regulators and lawyers, of course, have always traditionally applied privacy laws to remedy harms that have arisen, and they're invaluable. Mine was more of as I said, my background is psychology. I'm a computer person. I love to code. And so I brought a different mindset to the office involving coding, embedding much needed privacy protective measures into the design of our operations, bake it into the code, as I used to say. So it was a very different way of thinking from the traditional regulatory way of dealing with this in the legal community. So it complemented each other, and it's grown, as I said, dramatically since then, literally over 40 languages, and it was included in the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, a new law that came into effect in 2018 in the European Union, replacing the previous laws. And it's a very strong laws, and they included my Privacy by Design in it. So that just made it grow dramatically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some of our listeners, what were some of those components of the Privacy by Design?
So you have to be proactive, as I mentioned, in an effort to prevent the harms from arising. The second, there are 7 foundational principles. The second one is called privacy as the default setting. This is huge. This was also included in the GDPR that the European Union passed a few years ago. Privacy as the default setting says to people, you don't have to ask for privacy. You don't have to wade through all the terms of service and all the legalese in the privacy policy looking for the opt-out box that says, do not use my personal information for any purpose other than the intended primary purpose of the data collection that I've consented to. We don't expect you to do that. Life is short. People don't have time to do that. Privacy as the default setting says we give you privacy automatically. You don't have to wade through any of that. We give it to you automatically. We are only permitted to use your personal information for the primary purpose of the data collection. And if down the road a secondary use arises later on, we have to come back to you and seek your positive consent for the additional use of the information. This grows trust like you wouldn't believe. And trust has been fleeting these days. This builds trust like no other, and it's just really taken off.
Yeah, and you talk about the value of the information. It's the information is being sold today for profit and purposes not always known to the individual.
Unfortunately, that is the case. The reality is, when you go online and it says, we use cookies, is that okay with that? And you always say yes, because you want to get on with it. But often with the cookies that are used and other measures that are introduced, your privacy is out the window. Your personal information is often used in ways that was never intended, that you have not consented to, but it's online. Surveillance is abounding. And that's one of the major concerns that people in the privacy field have. So I give a lot of talks, as you might imagine. And when I talk to public sector groups and individuals, I just say, take a second to ask how your information is going to be used. Don't just say yes to everything. Say, I only want it used for this purpose that I'm consenting to right here and there. Once you express your interest in privacy, you'll be amazed how much feedback you get saying, oh, we have this, well, you can do this, you can do this, but you have to express an interest in it, both online and offline. You go into a store and, you're buying something, and they, at the end, might ask for some kind of number, your postal code, something. And I always say, can you tell me what you're going to do with that information? I really believe in strong privacy protection. Is this going to be a concern? Usually what happens is the person you're dealing with, they don't know. The clerk doesn't know. The clerk gets his or her manager. Manager comes, and the manager says, oh, you care about privacy. Oh, well then, we can do this, this, and this. So once you express an interest in it, you will get much greater protection.
So you mentioned in here that the social media has revised the end of privacy chance, and you're indicating that there's little evidence that the privacy is not a valued social norm. Do you think that's true? And is it true across generations? Do we have differences in how we're looking at privacy today?
It's nonsense. In fact, the youngest generation, Gen Z or Z, depending on where you live, they have greater concern for privacy than the millennials. It's amazing. Concern is growing among very young people as well as elderly people. So it's nonsense to say, well, you just have to get over it. You can't have any more privacy. That ship has sailed. I would say, get another ship. For what do you mean that ship has sailed? We have to have strong privacy. We have to preserve our freedom. You cannot have freedom without a strong base of privacy. So I reject any of those models that say, well, it's social media. There's nothing we can do. There's always something we can do, and we can do it now.
Do you think we'll get to a point where people eventually will be in control of their data and decide they can sell it to, whatever platform wants it for a price? Or
there will undoubtedly be some of that. I mean, I'm not suggesting that everyone cares equally about their privacy. So some people may wish to sell it, but most of the people I've talked to, and also the surveys that have been done, they've said they're not going to sell their personal information, that they want it used for the primary purpose that it was intended, and that beyond that, they want to protect their data. They understand the value of protecting privacy. So I'm not concerned about that.
You said that some technologies are privacy invasive and some are privacy enhancing. What sort of technologies would fit in each of those categories?
So it's called PETs, privacy enhancing technologies. PETs are abounding now in so many areas. When you go online, like Apple, for example, which is amazing, they have end-to-end encryption. So if you have an iPhone, as I do, your data is strongly protected. It will be communicated with the individual I'm speaking to, who I intend to communicate my information to. But encryption, which is a strong form of coding information, such that only those who have the permissible are permitted to use the code are able to actually engage in an understanding of it. If a third party wants to gain access to my encrypted communications, they're going to get gibberish. They don't have the code to open the communication. And so end-to-end encryption is the strongest form of encryption, because it says basically only the two parties at either end can gain access to it, because they've been permitted to do this and they've agreed to this. So when you look at things like encryption that are just abounding now, one of the strongest PETs, privacy enhancing technologies, is encryption. But you will see others developing. And that's why I want to give people hope that you don't have to give up on privacy. All you have to do is dig a little bit, and you will find PETs and encryption and other means of protecting your data.
Do you think that corporations are becoming more sensitive to the privacy issues? Is that becoming a bigger issue for them, or are they using that as a checkbox?
Companies like Google, for example, are developing stronger privacy protective measures, because especially in the EU, the European Union, where the General Data Protection Regulation, this strong law, is applied, they have found against a number of companies who have not been protecting privacy at considerable expense. I'm talking millions and millions of euros. So companies like Google, Apple, of course, has led the way in this. Even, believe it or not, Facebook, which is now Meta, they have privacy by design. You just have to ask for it. That's the only problem. They don't advertise that they lead with privacy by design, but they have a department that does this. So if you ask, how can I best protect my data on Facebook or Meta, you'll see the privacy by design come forward. So it's there. Sometimes you just have to scratch the surface to find it.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. I think I saw an ad recently from Facebook where they were advocating for more government regulation around privacy.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, I found that to be pretty fascinating.
It is surprising how much support you will find for privacy in areas that you wouldn't expect it to exist. So don't give up on it. Just scratch the surface and you'll be amazed at what you'll find.
So how do you sell to a company that there's going to be, costs for putting in these controls, that they're going to gain a competitive
Todd,
advantage?
it's so interesting. I've been invited to speak to a number of companies, as you can imagine, and I'll go in there, and the CEO and the board of directors will be there, and they're all looking down and they're thinking, "Oh, this is going to be bad news." And I always say to them, "Give me 10 minutes. Let me tell you how embedding privacy by design into your operations will strengthen your business and will attract new opportunity, as well as allowing you to preserve the customers you already have." And then they look up and I say, "Look, privacy by design is not privacy versus data utility or privacy versus marketing. No, it's privacy, and it's a positive sum model, not zero sum. So you embed privacy strongly into your operations, and you tell your customers the lengths you're going to protect their privacy." Companies have come back to me who have done this. So first of all, the messaging all changes. Then they're all looking at me and they're saying, "Oh, this could be good for business. Okay, tell us how to do it." I tell them how to do it. And then companies who've become certified for privacy by design have come back to me and said they love this. It has built loyalty, restored it where it was fleeting in the past. Trust, which has also been fleeting, is mounted. They said this builds trust like no other. And once the companies understand it's not privacy versus their business interests. No, it's privacy and your business interests. How do you do both? It changes the dialogue completely. And then you get so many interested parties. This has happened again and again. So I welcome opportunities to talk to businesses, especially who are cynical at the beginning.
What sort of benefits do they tell these other companies that they're going to get by implementing privacy by design?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned, trust has been fleeting. Customers are not relinquishing data to companies. They're holding things in themselves. They're not engaging in business as much as they could if that base of trust was there. So companies that do privacy by design, they've told me it has given them a competitive advantage over the other guys, because now customers come to them because they believe that their personal information is being protected and being used in ways that they want, as opposed to just, having it shared with, third parties unknown in an unauthorized manner. So it builds trust. It builds your base in terms of whatever your business is. It will allow you to retain the customers you have and will attract new customers. It's a total win-win.
And how about all of these, technologies are emerging, the facial recognition, the artificial intelligence, processing mounds and mounds of information. How do we get our arms around that with privacy?
So first of all, you always have to, what I say is look under the hood. So think of artificial intelligence. AI has enormous benefits, but it can also lead to massive erosion of privacy if you don't know what it's doing. So you cannot just say, well, there's an algorithm and it's doing something. No, you have to look under the hood. You have to engage in audits. You have to know what the AI is doing and what databases it's touching, what information it's gaining access to, and have people consented to this. So you can't just say, well, it's AI, nothing I can do. That's nonsense. Same with facial recognition. Your face is the most strongest identifier in existence. That data should be very strongly protected and should be under your control. Privacy is all about control, personal control over the use and disclosure of your personal information. Just because there's new technologies, facial recognition, AI, machine learning, whatever, doesn't mean you throw it out the window. No, you always have to look under the hood. Trust but verify. Actually, these days I say, forget about trust, just verify what it's doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been great, Anne. What other privacy tips or suggestions would you give for privacy officers, security officers that are helping to protect the privacy and security
What
of
I
their
always say to chief
organizations?
privacy officers is find a way to, I'm sure they don't report directly to the CEO, but I say to CEOs, make sure you touch base with your privacy officers so they know they have your ear. And if there are problems that arise, they can go to senior management and say, here's what we have to fix. We've looked under the hood. It's not doing what it's purported to do. So it's very important for privacy officers to be engaged with senior management and have regular dialogues. So senior management can be alerted to any problems that arise and also to benefits that arise from embedding strong privacy protective measures. You have to have a dialogue.
And how much interaction do you see with the CISOs between the privacy officers? And are you seeing a lot of CISOs and privacy and security officers having that role combined together?
I do. You should clearly talk to the CISOs. I always say, look, the term privacy subsumes a much broader set of protections than security alone. But in this day and age, if you don't have a strong base of security from end to end with full lifecycle protection, you're not going to have any privacy. So there has to be a constant dialogue between the CISO, the chief privacy officer. Privacy and security go hand in hand. It's not one versus the other. It's how can they complement each other. You have to have both.
Well, I think that's great advice, Anne. And thanks so much. I know you're a very busy person. Thanks for taking your time to share your insights to help other CISOs.
My pleasure, Todd. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Visit more CISO Stories podcasts on securityweekly.com, where you will find an index to prior episodes. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com.